powerfully choosing to manage our fear. Our guest today is going to talk about the importance of fear in our lives. She's a strong believer that we don't need to be fearless. We just need to learn how to channel and navigate our fear, because our fear can push us from good things to great things. Our fear can push us into confidence. It can push us into resilience. We're also going to talk about simplifying our lives, simplifying our professions, being present in our thoughts and in our mind. And when we simplify, we put down beautiful boundaries. Simplification and boundaries are like peanut butter and jelly. The conversation today is a beautifully authentic conversation with a solopreneur who has been doing this now for over 10 years. She inspires others. She's a motivational speaker. She speaks all over the world. And I'm excited for you to join us in this conversation today as we talk about so many amazing things. And you'll very quickly see how we tie all of these themes together. Let's sit down with Britt Tucker on today's GST Factor podcast episode. On today's episode of the GST Factor podcast, I'm excited to have Britt Tucker. Hi, Britt. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. A fellow Nashvilleian. I'm so excited for our conversation today. Britt, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Yes. So live in Nashville. I've been here for about 6 years. I speak for a living. So anything from keynotes to corporate trainings. I'm also a certified coach. And my passion is just really around helping people live out to their fullest potential.
Amazing. And Britt, what I love about some of the talks that you do and the motivation that you do, there's so much alignment with our GST Factor attributes. So let's talk a little bit about one of your speeches that you do, and it's a Dream Big speech.
Yeah. So I have one. It's called Dream Big. So it's kind of more of like a workshop, but it can also be a keynote. So I've done this in corporate. I've also done this in a college setting. So it's really about stopping, turning inward, looking at our dreams. We get so caught up in life that we're like, okay, we forget the things that we desire. We forget the things that are on our hearts. And so what this does, it's about an hour and a half, and we kind of walk through, what are your dreams? What are your desires? How do we put those in place? Are we dreaming big enough, right? Because if it's not big enough and it doesn't scare us, then are we holding ourselves back? Are we too much in a comfort zone? So yeah, I love doing it. It's so fun. I normally always have a few people cry at the end, which is good. It's good emotion, right? It's good emotion to let that release go and just be in tune with yourself and where you want to be in life. And so yeah, that's my Dream Big speech.
I love that alignment. I do think when you are dreaming big, it is more of that workshop, because you do need to have those thought exercises. You need to have that right mindset, but sometimes we need those conversations and those dialogues in order to be able to pull it out of ourselves.
Yes, I agree. I feel like most of us, when it comes to dreaming big, we are just like, it's like we have this desire and it's so hard to say it out loud because it's so scary. Or maybe we've been shot down before when we've said it, or someone had said something negative around it. So we just like take it and we bury it really deep. But in reality, I truly believe if you have a desire on your heart, it's there for a reason. But you've got to let other people know about it, right? Because other people can help you get to it as well.
You have to speak it into existence. You have to manifest it. You have to put that energy out there, because the universe is going to bring you the right people that you need, or the conversations.
Exactly. Yeah.
Amazing. So Britt, let's talk a little bit. I love you have this philosophy around fear and fearlessness. Mm-hmm. And so that's not a topic that we have typically discussed here, but I love it because we have a lot of entrepreneurs that are listening to this episode. And I think that a lot of times fear can play in our entrepreneurial journey or whether we are trying to figure out if we're going to take a step into that entrepreneurial journey. So walk us through kind of your take on that and your lessons on that.
Yes. So there is an amazing book called Big Magic. It's by Elizabeth Gilbert. It's like colorful on the front. I don't know if anybody who's listening, if you've seen it, she's the same one I believe that wrote Eat, Pray, Love. And she talks about fear in her book. And she talks about fear will always be in our lives. It will always be there. It's just a matter of how we manage it. Okay. So she talks about don't put it in the driver's seat. You're in the driver's seat. You just ask it to come along the ride with you. Like, hey, you're going to sit in the passenger seat. You're there. I see you. I acknowledge you, but you're not steering the wheel. And I truly think that most of the best things that have happened when I look back on my life and these experiences I've had or things that I've done or accomplishments, everything has happened because it's happened on the other side of fear. So I always say your best life lives on the other side of fear, right? Am I scared? I'm scared, I'd say 80% of the time. That's normal. That means you're human, right? Like our body puts up, walls for a reason. But your best life truly lives on the other side of fear. And I used to say, when people would describe me, I would always say, I'm fun, I'm feisty, and I'm fearless. And I changed that because I started thinking about it and I was like, fearless means that fear doesn't exist. Fear will always exist. So now it's brave. I look at myself as being brave, right? So just flip the script on it. But yeah, I mean, I think we as humans, we let fear run our life more than we should. And for me, things that I've done that I've been like super scared of when I'm like, okay, Britt, are you going to do this? Are you going to do this? We walk through this process in our head. Like, what are the outcomes? Are we going to jump in the deep end? Are we not? And when I think about, like I said, all the great things that I've done have all been on the other side of my comfort zone and where there was something like really scary,
What is fascinating about this, and I love this, because I think if we didn't have a little fear, we may not have the confidence or the resilience to take it by the horns. And I think, to your point, fear is not a bad thing. It's how you navigate it. It's how you channel it. Mm-hmm. That is really going to be, are you going to do good things? You're going to do great things.
Ooh, that's good. That's good, right? Good things versus great things. Yeah. Yeah. I think about I'm not scared of failing anymore. So I think a big fear that comes with fear in your life is I'm going to fail, And I always tell people, like, I don't fail. Either I win or I learn a lesson. Mm-hmm. I've fallen on my face so many times. I'm like, if we were to visual, I mean, I'm just like scraped up at this point, But I think when you reframe your mindset around it, it becomes so different. And I mean, still to this day, there are decisions I'm like, okay, Britt, are we going to do this? Are we going to jump in? Are we going to not? And I'll catch myself trying to talk myself out of it, and I'm like, no, you're just going to jump head first and we're going to figure it out and we're going to see what happens. So.
Because I like to say we fail fast and we fail forward.
Yes.
Because it's good, and coming from a tech side and a tech background, I always encouraged my teams, right? Like, I want us to fail because if we fail faster, we're going to get a little further along. It's like in sales, when you let's get through the no's really fast because eventually a yes is going to come. It's the same thing. Let's fail and let's fail fast, but let's fail forward because we're going to learn something. And it's that concept of I'm going to learn what to do or I'm going to learn what not to do.
Yes. Yes. Well, you get there faster too, right? The more that you're failing, the more that you're actually making decisions and taking steps forward versus that paralysis state we all get in where we try to analyze and pros and cons. And I mean, I rarely do pros and cons anymore. I threw that out so long ago because I was like, I like overanalyze things, So I'm like, just say yes, Britt, and you'll figure it out.
Well, because once you do get into a situation, right, you pivot.
Yes.
I love the Friends episode of the couch, right? Pivot. And I talk about this with my tiny humans. I also talk about it, as I'm doing my own workshops with high schoolers. I did a workshop a couple weeks ago with middle schoolers and, all the way up into, the corporate side. you want to jump in, you want to fail fast, you want to fail forward, but you also want to be agile enough to be ready to pivot. Like you always want to anticipate what that pivot is because otherwise we're not growing. We're not learning. We don't fall forward into perfection, right? It's progress, not perfection.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes me think about learning agility, which is when I think about learning agility, I think about taking experiences that we've had from the past and how do we use that insight into decisions we're going to make in the future.
And I think so many times people, when they are in a moment, like going through a situation, it's hard to see that. It's hard to see why am I in this? But I think what's really important is once you've gotten through that time, when you've gotten through that moment, I think it's really important to pause and retrospect and go, okay, what were the lessons from here and what serves me and what doesn't serve me and what can I take with me moving forward? I love that. Agile. What did you call it? Agile learning?
Learning agility.
Learning agility. I think that's beautiful, right? Because I think so many times people either don't expect us to still be learning or be inquisitive. They expect us to know everything. They expect that perfection. And that's just not the way of the world anymore, right? You need to constantly be curious, constantly ask questions. And I think that's a really healthy place to be.
Yes. Yes. And even like seeking out those experiences to learn, because some of us stop. I mean, we get in these comfort levels, I just entered a new decade, in age and I'm like, okay, Britt, like it's almost like a new beginning. Like, what do I want to learn? What do I want to do? What do I want to experience? Because I don't want to stop growing at all. Right. So, but it's also being intentional about it too.
And when you are intentional about it, it's building out your roadmap and saying, okay, here are the things that I'd like to accomplish in the next decade. Here's what I accomplished in the previous decades. Here are the things that I want to accomplish. And it's saying, I want to push myself. I want to push myself to other things and bigger things. Recently, I've heard a lot of athletes and also like personal trainers. They talk about this a lot because they're always pushing or training like for the next game or the next championship or whatever. And a lot of them who have met their physical goals are like, well, now I need another goal. And a lot of them have turned to being a triathlete because they needed that new challenge. They needed something to push themselves. They needed something. And I think that's so important is if you get to that point in your life where you're like, okay, I reached it, but now what? We don't want to be complacent. We don't want to stop growing. We want to say, well, what's the next thing and what's the next thing and what's the next thing? Because that way we're constantly growing, we're constantly changing, and we're becoming better humans.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with that.
Britt, what is your GSC factor attribute that you most resonate with? And as a reminder to our listeners, we have 6 of them. So being confident, inquisitive, imaginative, being present, resilient, and influential. So Britt, what is yours that you really resonate with right now in this new season of your life?
Okay. Yeah. We talked about dream big, which falls under imaginative. So definitely there. I've always been this high energy, inspirational, motivational person. That is just part of my makeup. For the longest time, I tried to push it down and I was like, okay, I'm a little too much. But I think this new decade for me, I'm really focusing on, what are the new ideas for me? What do I want for this? I would say one that I resonate with in the past is definitely resilience. I would say the last from 2020 to 2023, they were probably the 3 lowest years of my life up until this point. And so I am still recovering from those years. I'm still healing from a lot of things, my health, mentally, emotionally. But I mean, we all go through those hard times, we all go through that. And it's what we take from it. What are we going to learn from it? How does it shape us into the person and going to prepare us for what's ahead of us in the future? So those are definitely the top 2 I resonate with.
We have to have different seasons in order to be able to continually evolve.
Yes.
And it sounds like the last 3 years or so was what I would call maybe one of those seasons of being, right? It was a lot of struggles. It was a lot of obstacles and overcoming. And now you're kind of entering this doing
Mm-hmm.
season, right? So, and I think, some people always think like, oh, you're a GSD or you're getting shit done all the time. And that's far from the truth. You have to be able to have that ebb and flow. You have to have that ability to have those seasons of being and have those seasons of doing. And depending on that season, loving yourself in that season and being present with yourself in that season. And I think that sometimes we're not patient enough in those seasons.
Guilty. Guilty. Our type A personalities. I'm like, oh, this is so uncomfortable. I didn't get my list done today. Yeah. I'll share this story with you because it was so powerful. My mentor is amazing. He's this amazing entrepreneur out of Atlanta, and we talk weekly. And I just remember that, when you're type A, right? When you're used to putting something on paper, setting the goals for it, going after it and accomplishing it, like that is just the routine. We're goal crushers, right? Like that's what we are. Like I know how to get shit done. And in those 3 years, the focus becomes more on like a survival mode. And so you have like no creativity, like I've zapped of my creativity, right? It was just like, am I feeding myself today? Am I showering today? And I think what's interesting about that is I remember him telling me, because I was so frustrated. It was such an uncomfortable feeling for me. And he said, Britt, think about yourself in a basketball game. And it's funny. I always laugh because I would never be in a basketball game because I'm 5'1". You know what I mean? Like, can we think of like another sport? I was a college cheerleader, but he was like, think yourself on the basketball team and you've been like a star, right? You've been a star on the basketball team. Maybe you're the point guard. And now you've been put on the bench, but you don't understand why you've been put on the bench. Okay. The coach pulled you out of the game and he put you on the bench. So you're just watching everybody else. You're watching the mistakes. You're like, oh, I've got this in me. I can do this, right? Like, why am I not in the game? I'm a high achiever. I'm a high scorer. But he's actually got you on the bench because he's helping you learn lessons. You're watching the game and he's waiting to pull you into the biggest game. So he's saving all your time and energy for a bigger game, like the championship game. And I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense to me, right? So that's when I shifted my mindset of like sitting on the bench for me. Everybody's got to sit on the bench at some point, right? Let me go ahead and get it over with, and then I'll be ready for the championship game. So I love that story. It just kind of helped me shift my mindset around that uncomfortable season of my life and where that resilience and stuff played in.
I think that's such a great story that's applicable to every walk of life. I think it's also very applicable to entrepreneurs, right? Mm-hmm. You've been an entrepreneur yourself for quite some time now. We've talked a little bit about it, but let's dive in a little deeper into that mindset of an entrepreneur, right? I think we are seeing more and more female entrepreneurs, female solopreneurs, and I think that that's very exciting. It's very healthy. I think it's great for our economy and our world. And I think it affords a little bit more of that work-life family integration that I like to call it. Talk to us a little bit about what is that mindset that has served you as you have been that solopreneur now for the last 13, 14 years?
Mindset for me, when I think about it, I think about gratitude comes to mind. I practice gratitude every day. Every morning in my journal, in my planner, I write down 3 things I'm grateful for. And I've been doing that probably for the last 9 years. I really feel like it shifts my mindset a lot on those days where I'm like, and I write down at the end of every day, I write down 3 wins for the day. So it doesn't matter how crappy the day was, how shitty the day was. Like, no, Britt, you had 3 wins. Like, find 3 wins today, And so I think it's just shifting my mindset in that. I am a motivational person. A lot of my keynotes are motivational and inspirational, but there are times when you're not going to be motivated. And there are times when you're not going to be inspired, And for me, that's where discipline kicks in. So what muscle are you strengthening with discipline, right? And I'm an entrepreneur who has ADHD. So if anyone's listening and resonates with this, habits for me are huge. Like I have to have habits. It just helps keep the chaos out of my mind. But if I'm like, no, like you're going to get up, you're going to walk your dog, you're going to take your vitamins. Like this is the routine. You know what I mean? Like, but that's where discipline kicks in, and you have to have discipline. It's discipline that, on days I don't want to get out of bed, on days I want to sleep in, like no, Britt, like you're supporting yourself here, and your dog who's very expensive. Like we got to get up, we got to make this work, So, but I would also say this too. There are days to recognize when your body and your mind needs rest. And that took me a really long time to figure that out because I was so heads down and I was so grind. But I realized those days that were restful were actually more productive for my productive days, So yeah, I would say as far as mindset, being an entrepreneur, it'll be 10 years in July. So next month will be 10 years of it on my own, which is so crazy to think about and so scary. And by the way, anyone who's listening, I still don't have everything figured out. So 10 years in, we're still figuring it out. But yeah, I mean, I think it's all about your mindset. I mean, that's a key component in owning your own business and working for yourself.
So what is Britt powerfully choosing in 2024?
Oh my gosh, this is so good. Such a good question. So it's funny. I choose a word for the year and I choose a motto for the year. So I'm going to start with my motto. My motto is get in the game. Okay. So this came about another conversation with my mentor, and I would share his name because I want to give him credit, but I don't want everyone to flock to him because I'm selfishly want to keep it for myself. But he said, Britt, you're so great at what you do. You help so many people, but if you want to make a bigger impact, you need to get in the game. So that is a question I've been asking myself at the beginning of January. How do I get in the game? That's introducing myself to more people, getting out, doing things, right? Making connections, serving others. How can I provide value to other people? So that's my motto. For what I'm powerfully choosing this year, my word is simplify this year. Yes, it's simplify. I'm simplifying relationships. Who needs to be there? Who doesn't need to be there anymore? I'm simplifying where I spend my time. I'm simplifying the foods that I'm eating. I'm simplifying where my mind and my energy goes every day. I think one of the big things we struggle with as entrepreneurs is we're good. We're multi-passionate people. We're good at so many things that we say yes to a lot of things. But I'm simplifying that. I'm pulling that back. Like I want a simple, stress-free, as much as possible, being an entrepreneur life. And so for me, that simplicity is really what I'm aiming for in the next decade.
I love that. Simplification. I think we live in this world in this day and age where it's go, go, go. You got to multitask. You got to be doing 10 things at one time. And I think when I hit the decade that you are also in, I was suddenly hit with that. I want to simplify things. I want to have less electronics. I don't need to cram every single minute of the day. I'm going to have these spaces to breathe in these spaces, and I'm going to plug in those rest and recharges. I do think some European countries that have these siestas planned in their day are definitely onto something. But as I've done that, my family, who is so used to like, we go, 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 go. Now that I'm like, I've pivoted us into this, like, let's breathe and let's have these moments. Let's have these be present moments. Everybody's now thriving that much greater and that much more beautifully, because with simplification comes beautiful boundaries.
Ooh, I love that. Yes.
Because I think so many times as a solopreneurs, we think, we don't have any boundaries because we got to get shit done. But actually, beautiful boundaries are more important than ever before.
I love that. Boundaries and simplification go hand in hand for sure.
They do. Well, Britt, it has been such a fun conversation with you. What final nugget do you want to leave with our listeners today?
That's such a good question. I'm like, it depends on the week and how I'm feeling for the day, right? This is how I'm feeling today. This is Thursday, June 13th. We're recording this. You can cut this out if you need to, but today I'm feeling just being present with yourself and what you're doing and slowing down a little bit and knowing that there's always going to be a to-do list, right? And you can get shit done, right? But also, you need to take time for yourself. You need to be present because life is happening all around you every single day. So don't miss out on that.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being on the GSD Factor podcast today. We've really enjoyed having you. And to our listeners, thank you for listening. And don't forget to get shit done.
Thanks for listening to the GSD Factor podcast. If you liked this episode, please rate and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, where you can also find previous episodes. Let's also connect on LinkedIn and Instagram. If you're looking for more information on the GSD Factor, visit us at gsdfactor.com. And always remember to GSD, get shit done.